Story number 1. You know, I never believed in legends or ghost stories. That stuff was always for kids. But there's something happening at Marlin Beach that's got me thinking otherwise. See, every year, around mid-July, someone goes missing in the water. Just vanishes. No bodies, no traces, nothing. It's been going on for as long as anyone can remember. My friends and I were not the superstitious type, but we decided to check it out this year. It was more of a dare, really. Marlin Beach is just this normal beach during the day, families and tourists everywhere. But as the sun sets, the place empties out fast, like people know something we don't. We set up camp near the water, thinking we'd stay awake all night, maybe catch a glimpse of whatever was causing these disappearances. Sounds stupid, right? But we were curious, and honestly, a little bit buzzed. The night started off normal enough. We had a few drinks, made some jokes, typical stuff. But as it got later, this fog started rolling in, thick and heavy. That's when things got weird. The air felt charged, like right before a storm, and the ocean, it was making this sound. Not waves, not exactly. More like a whisper. We should have left then, but we didn't. We were too caught up in the thrill, I guess. Around 2 a.m., that's when we saw something. There was this figure, standing at the water's edge. It looked like a person, but all wrong. Too tall, too thin, and its movements were jerky, unnatural. My friend Jake, he was always the brave one. He started walking towards it, calling out, asking what it was. The rest of us, we were frozen, just watching. The figure didn't respond, just kept standing there, swaying slightly. Then, as Jake got closer, the figure just slipped into the water. No splash, no sound, just gone. Jake stopped dead in his tracks, and that's when we heard it. This low, guttural growl coming from the water. It wasn't human, I can tell you that. We ran. I've never run so fast in my life. We didn't stop until we were back in the car, and even then, we could still hear that sound in our heads. The next day, we found out another swimmer had gone missing. Same night we were there. No trace of them, just like all the others. Story number 2. We never thought a day at the beach could turn into our worst nightmare. It was just me, Jay, Emma, and Chris, best friends since forever, looking for some fun in the sun. We'd been planning this trip for weeks, counting down the days to feel the sand between our toes and hear the waves crashing. It was supposed to be perfect. The beach was crowded, families with kids running around, couples sunbathing, the usual stuff. We found a spot, laid out our towels, and goofed around, throwing a frisbee, splashing in the water. It was just like any other summer day. Emma dared Jay to see how far he could swim out. Jay, being Jay, couldn't say no to a dare. He was always the adventurous one, pushing the limits. He laughed and ran into the water, diving through the waves like they were nothing. We watched him swim out, cheering him on. But then, something changed. The cheering stopped. Jay wasn't swimming back. He was struggling, arms flailing, getting pulled further and further away from the shore. Panic set in real fast. We were yelling, waving our arms, trying to get someone's attention. Chris tried to swim out to him, but the current was too strong. He barely made it back himself, coughing and gasping for air. The beach went into a frenzy. People were shouting, pointing. I felt like I couldn't breathe, like the whole world was spinning. Emma was crying, screaming Jay's name over and over. It was chaos. Then out of nowhere, this guy runs past us, a lifeguard or maybe just someone brave enough to face the waves. He dove into the water, swimming with strong, determined strokes towards Jay. We watched, holding our breath, praying. It felt like hours, but it was only minutes. The lifeguard reached Jay, who was barely conscious by then, and started pulling him back to shore. Every stroke looked like a battle against the angry sea. The crowd on the beach had gathered, everyone waiting, hoping. And then finally they made it back. Jay was alive, but barely. He was coughing up water, gasping for air. The lifeguard laid him on the sand, checking his breathing, talking to him in a calm, steady voice. We rushed over, falling to our knees beside him. Emma was sobbing, holding Jay's hand. Chris was shaking, mumbling thanks to the lifeguard. I just sat there, stunned, watching my best friend fight for every breath. Paramedics arrived, taking over, checking Jay's vitals, asking us questions. It all felt surreal, like a bad dream. They put Jay on a stretcher, loaded him into an ambulance. We followed, silent, shaken. Our fun day at the beach turned into a terrifying ordeal. At the hospital, we waited for what seemed like an eternity. When the doctor finally came out, he said Jay was going to be okay. Exhausted, shaken up, but okay. Relief washed over us like a wave. We could finally breathe again. Jay told us later what it was like, being caught in that rip current. He said he felt helpless, like he was fighting an invisible monster. He thought he was going to die out there, alone in the vast ocean. We learned a lot that day, about the ocean's power, about the thin line between fun and danger, and about the strength of friendship. We were lucky. Jay was lucky. Things could have gone very differently. I still hear the sound of the waves sometimes in my dreams. It's a reminder of that day, of how quickly things can change, of how precious life is. We still go to the beach, but we're more careful now. We respect the ocean, its beauty, and its dangers. And every time I see a lifeguard, I remember the stranger who saved Jay's life, the hero who dove into the chaos without a second thought. It's funny how you never really think about lifeguards, just sitting up there in their towers, until the moment you need them. They're like unsung heroes, watching over us, ready to jump into the unknown to save a life. That day at the beach changed us. We came face to face with how fragile we all are, how quickly things can turn. We talk about it sometimes, about how we felt, what we learned. It's a bond we share, a reminder of the day we almost lost one of us. Now when we go to the beach, we stick together, keep an eye on each other. We don't take risks with the ocean anymore. We learned our lesson, the hard way, and we're grateful for every moment we have, for the second chance we got. Story number 3. I never thought I'd be writing this down. Story number 3. I never thought I'd be writing this down, but after what happened at Crescent Beach, I just gotta get it out. My name's Tyler, and this is probably the craziest, scariest thing that's ever happened to me. It was supposed to be a regular day at the beach with my family. My dad, always the early bird, had us up and packed before I could even argue. My little sister, Lily, was bouncing around with her new inflatable dolphin, and Mom was just happy we were all together. Crescent Beach was our go-to spot. It wasn't usually crowded, and the waves were just right for a bit of body surfing. We got there, set up our spot, and before I knew it, Lily was tugging at my arm, begging me to go into the water with her. We were splashing around, having a blast, when I heard it. This kind of collective gasp from the shore. I turned around and saw people pointing out at the water. My heart dropped into my stomach when I saw it. A fin, cutting through the water, not too far from where we were. Panic ripped through the beach like wildfire. Everyone was screaming, running, trying to get out of the water. I grabbed Lily, who was frozen in fear, and started swimming back as fast as I could. The shouts from the beach turned into a blur. My mind was racing. All I could think about was that fin, how close it was, and if we were going to make it. Lily was clinging to me and I kept telling her we'd be okay, but honestly I was just trying to convince myself. We were almost there, almost to the shore, when I heard someone shouting my name. I turned and saw Dad, knee-deep in the water, waving frantically at us. That's when I noticed something else. Someone still in the water, a bit away from us. It was Mr. Henderson, our neighbor. He was struggling, looking like he couldn't make it back. Without really thinking, I told Lily to keep swimming to Dad and turn back. I know it sounds crazy, but I couldn't just leave him there. Mr. Henderson was a good guy, always had a smile and a wave for everyone in the neighborhood. I reached him, and he was gasping, out of breath. He'd gotten a cramp or something and couldn't swim properly. I remember him looking at me with wide, terrified eyes as I grabbed his arm. "We gotta move, Mr. Henderson," I shouted over the noise, trying to sound braver than I felt. I started pulling him back to shore, my arms burning and my heart pounding like crazy. The fin, it was closer now, moving in a slow, menacing way that made every second feel like an hour. I could hear Lily and Mom screaming my name from the beach, their voices filled with fear. The water was chaotic, with people splashing and crying. I kept glancing over my shoulder, expecting to see that shark right behind us. Mr. Henderson wasn't much help. He was pretty much dead weight, scared stiff. Just when I thought we wouldn't make it, Dad was there, in the water, reaching out for us. He grabbed Mr. Henderson and helped pull him the rest of the way. I was so relieved I could barely stand. We stumbled onto the sand, out of breath and shaking. I collapsed, my heart still racing, and looked out at the water. The fin was circling now, just a dark shadow against the waves. It felt surreal, like something out of a movie. People were huddled together on the beach, some crying, others just in shock. The lifeguards were trying to calm everyone down, but it was pretty much chaos. I just sat there watching the water, feeling like I'd just lived through a nightmare. The rest of the day was a blur. We packed up our stuff and went home, everyone quiet and still shaken up. Lily clung to Mom the whole way back, and even Dad looked pale and shaken. I keep thinking about it, about how close we were, how it could have gone so wrong. I've been to Crescent Beach a million times, but now I don't know if I can ever go back. That image of the shark fin cutting through the water, it's like burned into my brain.